For 3 decades, Soul Train stood as an unshakable pillar of American television. From its modest Chicago beginnings in 1970 to its nationwide dominance throughout the 1970s and 1980s, the show created by Don Cornelius gave black artists and dancers a platform no other program had ever provided. Every Saturday morning, millions of viewers tuned in to watch the Soul Train line, the colorful fashions, and the electrifying performances from legends like Aretha Franklin, Marvin Gaye, and Michael Jackson. But in 2006, after more than 1,100 episodes, the show vanished from the airwaves with almost no explanation. No farewell special, no grand announcement, just silence. What happened during the filming of one particular episode in March 2006 remains one of television's most quietly devastating moments. A single day of production that effectively ended an American institution. To understand why that final filmed episode proved so catastrophic, one must first understand Don Cornelius himself. Born in Chicago's Bronzeville neighborhood in 1936, Cornelius worked as a police officer and a salesman before breaking into broadcasting. He was not a natural showman in the traditional sense. Where other hosts screamed with enthusiasm, Cornelius spoke in a deep, measured baritone. His signature sign-off, "And you can bet your last money, it's all going to be a stone gas, honey," became iconic precisely because he delivered it with such calm authority. Cornelius was, above all else, a control freak in the best sense of the word. He dictated everything on his set: the dancers' clothing, the choreography, the camera angles, even the way performers moved their bodies. He believed that Soul Train represented black excellence, and he refused to let anything tarnish that image. That commitment to a particular vision became increasingly difficult to maintain as the music industry shifted in the late 1980s and 1990s. Hip-hop emerged as the dominant force in black music, but Cornelius wanted nothing to do with it. He found gangsta rap vulgar and feared it would destroy everything he had built. In a 1992 interview with the Los Angeles Times, he openly admitted, "I don't want to play music that degrades black people. I don't want to be part of that." While noble in intention, this stance slowly suffocated his show. Younger audiences flocked to MTV Raps and BET's Rap City, where they could see Tupac, Nas, and the notorious B.I.G. Soul Train became something their parents watched, a museum piece rather than a living, breathing cultural force. By the time Cornelius stepped down as host in 1993, handing the microphone to Mistro Clark and later Shamar Moore, the damage was already done. Ratings that had once reached nearly 4 million viewers per week had dropped by nearly half. The show bounced between time slots and networks, losing its sense of identity with each move. Tribune Entertainment, which distributed Soul Train to stations nationwide, grew increasingly frustrated with the declining numbers. Behind the scenes, Cornelius remained involved despite no longer hosting, and those who worked with him described a man growing more isolated and bitter with each passing season. He rarely visited the set. When he did, he often left without speaking to anyone. Then came March 2006. The episode scheduled for production on March 18th was supposed to be a standard installment of Soul Train, which by then had been reduced to producing only a handful of new episodes per year. According to a 2008 investigative piece in Vibe magazine, multiple production staff members who were present that day have described an atmosphere of quiet chaos from the moment filming began. The guest list had been changed 3 times in the preceding week. The featured performer, a young West Coast hip-hop artist whose name has never been officially released, arrived nearly 90 minutes late with an entourage of more than 20 people. Witnesses told Vibe that the artist's management team demanded changes to the stage setup at the last minute, including the removal of the iconic Soul Train backdrop. What happened next remains the subject of intense speculation because so few people have spoken publicly about it. Multiple former crew members, interviewed separately over the years by different publications, have described a performance that violated nearly every rule Don Cornelius had ever established. The lyrics contained explicit content that had not been cleared beforehand. The dancers accompanying the artist performed moves that several staff members described as overtly sexual and aggressive. One former production assistant, who requested anonymity in a 2015 oral history published by Complex, recalled that the whole vibe just felt wrong. It wasn't Soul Train. It was something else entirely, and everyone in the room knew it. The breaking point came when Don Cornelius, who had been watching from a back corner of the studio, reportedly walked onto the floor and told the director to cut the cameras. According to two separate accounts published in The Undefeated in 2019, Cornelius then made a phone call to executives at Tribune Entertainment while still standing on the set. His exact words have never been verified, but the outcome is not in dispute. Within 2 weeks, Tribune informed Soul Train producers that it would not renew its distribution agreement. Without Tribune, the show lost access to more than 40% of its affiliate stations. Production was halted immediately. The episode filmed that day was never edited, never mixed, never prepared for broadcast. It simply sat on a hard drive somewhere, a ghost that would never see the light of day. No official announcement of cancellation ever came. Soul Train simply stopped appearing on schedules. Some stations continued airing reruns for a few months, but by the summer of 2006, the show had effectively ceased to exist. Dorian Gregory, who had been hosting the show during its final years, told the AV Club in 2017 that he learned the show was over when he showed up to work and the production office was empty. "Nobody called me," he said. "Nobody sent an email. I just walked in one day and the furniture was gone." That's how it ended. Not with a bang. With an empty room. The silence that followed was deafening. Cornelius retreated to his home in the San Fernando Valley and refused nearly all interview requests. In 2007, he briefly appeared on a local Los Angeles radio program and offered a single sentence about the show's demise. "I think it went far enough." He never elaborated. Meanwhile, the dancers and crew members who had dedicated years to the show were left with no closure. Rosie Perez, who had danced on Soul Train before becoming an acclaimed actress, later described the show's ending as an unspoken sadness in her memoir. "We didn't get to say goodbye," she wrote. "We didn't get to thank Don. It just stopped, and we all went home and waited for a phone call that never came." The personal tragedies that followed have cast an even darker shadow over those final days. In 2008, Cornelius was arrested for domestic violence following an incident with his estranged wife. He pleaded no contest and received probation. On February 1, 2012, at the age of 75, Don Cornelius died by suicide at his Los Angeles home. He left behind a note that has never been made public. The news sent shockwaves through the entertainment world, but even then, the full story of Soul Train's final episode remained largely untold. Most obituaries focused on the show's golden era, glossing over the messy, painful final years. In the years since Cornelius's death, efforts have been made to preserve and honor the Soul Train legacy. BET launched American Soul, a dramatic series about the show's early days, in 2019. The Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture holds multiple artifacts from the program. Thousands of old episodes have been digitized and uploaded to YouTube, where they have found new audiences born long after the show went off the air. The Soul Train awards continue annually, though they are now produced by BET with little connection to the original series. But the 2006 episode has never been released. According to a 2021 report from The Ringer, the footage remains in a legal and creative limbo. Multiple parties claim ownership rights, and those who have seen the footage describe it as unreleasable for both legal reasons and out of respect for Cornelius's vision. Whether the world will ever see what happened that March afternoon remains an open question. Some archivists argue the footage should be preserved for historical purposes. Others believe it should remain sealed forever, a final, private moment for a man who gave so much of himself to the public. What makes the story of Soul Train's final episode so haunting is not just what happened on that soundstage. It is what the show represented and how quietly it disappeared. Soul Train was never just a music program. It was a declaration that Black culture deserved a national stage, presented with dignity and joy. Don Cornelius fought for that vision for 36 years. He sacrificed marriages, friendships, and ultimately his own peace of mind to protect it. And in the end, it was not low ratings or changing tastes that killed his show. It was a single episode that finally asked him to compromise everything he believed in. He refused, and for that refusal, the show died. The irony is not lost on those who study television history. Cornelius spent his career giving black artists a voice, but he could not accept the direction that voice eventually took. Hip-hop was not going away. The explicit lyrics, the aggressive postures, the raw energy of the streets, these were the new expressions of black youth culture, for better or worse. Cornelius saw them as a betrayal of everything Soul Train stood for. A younger generation saw him as a gatekeeper who had outlived his usefulness. Both sides were right, and both sides were wrong, and the collision between those two truths is what ended the show. Today, Soul Train exists in a strange cultural space. It is simultaneously beloved and forgotten, celebrated and neglected. Young people discover the Soul Train line through TikTok challenges and Instagram reels, often unaware that they are participating in a tradition that began more than 50 years ago. The unaired 2006 episode has become a kind of urban legend among television historians, a lost artifact that represents the moment when two eras of black culture failed to understand each other. Perhaps it is better that way. Perhaps some stories are more powerful when they remain unfinished, when the final chapter is written in speculation rather than documentation. What remains undeniable is that Don Cornelius built something that had never existed before and has never been replicated since. No show since Soul Train has captured the intersection of black music, dance, fashion, and television with such consistent excellence for such an extended period. The 2006 episode may never see the light of day, and perhaps it shouldn't, but the 36 years that preceded it, the thousands of performances, the millions of dancers, the generations of viewers who saw themselves reflected on screen for the first time, those remain. And as Cornelius himself might have said, you can bet your last money on that.